What if your brain wasn't broken because you couldn't meditate? What if the problem was the meditation? Welcome back to Beyond Chronic Burnout, where we're rewriting the rules of well being one neurodistinct nervous system at a time. I'm your host, Carole Jean Whittington, and today we're flipping the meditation narrative on its head. Let me guess. You've tried clear your mind, sit still, follow the breath, only to end up more anxious, more frustrated, or convinced you're failing at something everyone else seems to swear by. Well, you're not alone, and you are not doing it wrong. Our guest today gets it, and in the most personal, lived in way. Tanya Roberts is an AuDHD artist, meditation guide, and the creator of Mindfulness Done Differently, a space where fidgeting, sensory play, sound, and movement are the meditation. After years of struggling with panic disorder and feeling like a mindfulness misfit, her autistic and ADHD identification unlocked a whole new world and helped her create practices that work with spicy brains, not against them. She's here to help you stop forcing peace and start feeling it on your terms. In today's episode, we're going to discuss why traditional meditation can backfire for our bodies and brains, what accessible mindfulness actually looks like. Spoiler alert, it might include a stress ball, so grab yours. How to regulate your nervous system with tools that honor your wiring, and what Tanya would tell her younger autistic ADHD self about healing, self-trust, and rest. So grab your fidget tool, get comfy, and let's dive in. Are you an autistic woman or a helping professional seeking a fresh perspective on unmasking and burnout recovery? Then you need to hear about my new book, Living Unmasked. In Living Unmasked, I share my own personal journey and lay the essential groundwork for autistic women to build a joyful and authentic relationship with themselves. For therapists, clinicians, and coaches listening, this book offers invaluable insights to deepen your understanding and support of your autistic clients. It's time to discover the path to truly getting into your comfort zone. Learn more about Living Unmasked and begin your journey today. You can find all the details at whittingtonwellbeing.com. That's whittingtonwellbeing.com. Take the first steps towards reclaiming your life with Living Unmasked.
Step out of the shadows, feel the power rise, catch the spark inside you, let your spirit fly. Beyond the chronic burnout, Carole Jean's your guide. Find your steady rhythm, life's joy on the tide. Flourish forward, bright and bold. Leave the burnout far behind. In this journey, hearts unfold. Power's yours, seek and find.
Welcome to the show, Tanya. I am so excited to have you here. You are one of my favorite folks, and we always have so much fun whenever we get together.
We do. Yeah, I'm so excited, Carole Jean.
Well, I wanted to have you here on the show during Self-Care September because what you do is really magical. And I know that in other conversations you and I've had that, and in a lot of the work that you do, you share really often that you had a panic disorder and it was a really big part of your journey before you were identified as AuDHD. So I would love to know, what was that time like for you? And what helped you begin to climb out of burnout and those panic attacks and anxiety?
Yeah, well, good question. I mean, it's hard to think about this because it was such an awful time, but I think telling the story is really important because I'm hoping someone out there will feel less alone and maybe relate to this. And no, it doesn't have to be like this forever. Because when you're in that time, you just feel so desperate for relief because you don't get it any, ounce of relief day in or day out, 24/7. The panic is just tormenting you. So if this helps anyone, then I'm happy. So I've always been a bit anxious even as a child, but I think I didn't really recognize it. It was sort of a low level anxiety, just sensory overwhelm, things like that I didn't recognize back then were sensory overwhelm. Just kind of felt a little overwhelmed all the time. Then fast forward to early adulthood, early 20s. I started working in a tech job. It was a tech marketing job, open concept office, tight deadlines, steady flow of caffeine and deadlines and all that. I was kind of on display for everyone to look at, in the center of the office, a lot of distractions. We would do, and just thinking back on this now, it makes me cringe. We would do work trips to Vegas. I planned trade shows as part of my job, and I would share a hotel room with a female colleague, and we would just be expected to socialize all the time on the lunch break, after work. And I was completely burning out, and I got to the point where I was having multiple panic attacks a day, really, really intense anxiety. And I couldn't even go into a work meeting without having a panic attack. And I was masking through it the whole time, just pretending everything's okay. Don't run out of the room. You're going to be fine, trying to do my box breathing, which actually helped a little bit. But I was still just on the verge of that panic attack almost the entire day for a full year. It was absolute hell, if I'm being honest. It was complete and utter hell. And sometimes I'd wake up at night having a panic attack. I would just wake up, gasping for air, sweating, not being able to bring my heart rate down. I was beyond burnout. I was at rock bottom, I think. And so I turned to alcohol thinking, okay, well, maybe this will help me relax. Spoiler alert, it didn't. It made the anxiety much worse the next day, particularly, and impacted my sleep. It was bad. I mean, I didn't have a problem with it, but I think I was having a wine every day and it wasn't helping me. So tried exercising, and that helped quite a bit, but I was still really mega anxious. And then I went to therapy, and they did the classic, no shade to therapists because a lot of them are really good professionals, but they didn't know I was neurodivergent. So they did the typical, okay, let's look at your childhood, your trauma, what event happened to make you feel anxious. But nothing was quite clicking. They had me do exposure therapy in situations I felt panic. It made it worse. Nothing was helping. And I tried meditation at the time, but that was hard too because I had trouble sitting still. I just thought I sucked at it. So I kind of just threw in the towel and the meditation pillow and essential oils and just said, I suck at meditation, whatever. This is my lot in life. So
So right there with you.
yeah, decide this is not for me. But then fast forward, so I remained anxious, not to that level, but still much more anxious than I needed to be for many years after that. And it was only 2.5 years ago I discovered, I went to a psychologist, an expert in neurodivergent women. A lot of people in my family were starting to get diagnosed or identified as autistic ADHD. So I started thinking, oh, wait, I can relate to that. Maybe I'm a little spicy in the meatball too. So I sought out this expert and went through a long process, brought a categorized list to her, which is the most autistic thing I could think of. She should have just rubber stamped it right there. You're one of us.
It's like, how do you say it without saying it?
Yeah, I think
I
it was
brought my binder.
Yeah, I brought my binder. Categorized. I had like childhood development, repetitive body movement, special interests, social, really everything. It was all categorized, very detailed. And yeah, so she went through her process and by the end identified me as autistic and ADHD. ADHD was a surprise to me, but it makes sense now, all the conflicting traits, how I never quite felt like I identified 100% with autism. So that was interesting. And a lot changed after that, particularly, paying more attention to my social and sensory needs. And I don't know if you can relate to this, Carole Jean, but I just started going ham on the fidgets. I'm like, okay, just Amazon packages were coming every day with every kind of fidget, you can think of. I was really leaning in hard to meeting my sensory needs. And I have this really squishy stress ball that I used. And then I thought, okay, why don't I combine that with meditation? So I meditated, used the stress ball, and then all of a sudden I felt like I could concentrate and meditate and get into that mindful state a lot easier when I was using the fidget. So that's kind of when my Mindfulness Done Differently approach was born, combining things that I know for me help my neurodivergent brain, movement, fidgeting, art, sensory play, and sound, and combining that with meditation to make it kind of more accessible to spicy brain folks like myself. And that for me was the key. And, obviously along with other things like the right therapy, accommodations, lifestyle changes, and the meditation exercise, all of those things together help me slay what I call the anxiety monster. So that's kind of my backstory on that.
Oh my gosh, it's just so stinking relatable. And for those of us and anybody out there listening, if you were relating to what Tanya was just sharing about, the panic attacks, and it's like things would get worse and it would wake you up in your sleep. You might also, if you're one of us and you have MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, and you are having histamine floods, it shows up like anxiety and a panic attack. And so, a lot of us have these really similar occurrences and experiences, but they come in different ways and for different reasons. And so, as an MCAS patient over here, I'm so relating because I remember laying in bed and I was in a dead sleep. And I remember waking up out of a dead sleep, like in a full blown, what I thought was a panic attack, but what turned out to be a histamine flood and adrenal surge from MCAS. But I didn't know that at the time. And I was just terrified. It was so scary because all I remember, and this is the only time this ever happened, but I remember when I sat up and I was like gasping for air, and my brain kept thinking is, oh my gosh, I'm about to die.
Oh, it's
And it's
terrifying,
just,
isn't it?
oh my
It's
gosh,
terrifying.
yes.
You feel like you're dying, whether it's an MCAS, I think you said MCAS, whether it's a histamine response, a panic attack. We don't know what's happening in there. Our brain's saying, this is it. You're dead. This is, say your final prayer
Danger,
or
Will
whatever.
Robinson.
Danger. Yeah.
Danger.
And we can laugh about it now, but at the time it's absolutely terrifying, and feeling like you have no control over your body. That was the worst, that I cannot control this. It's controlling me, that you're almost like a prisoner in your own body.
Yeah. And I so relate to that, having, it's like, oh, I didn't have anybody telling me. I was doing it to myself. So that's like, bless my heart moment. But I was like, I got to get in this situation, like the exposure therapy. I got to put myself in this thing. I got to get over this. I got to knuckle down and get through this, right? I got to figure this out. I got to suck it up, buttercup. And it just made everything worse. And it was in those situations where, everything, and it was just like this cycle. And I had tried some meditation and I was doing, some yoga and things at the time with one of my friends. And I just remember thinking, I am about to jump out of my skin. I wanted to scream, and everybody else is in this room, like all relaxed and like, oh, this is so wonderful. And I'm like, I'm going to kill one of you if you don't move out of my way. Let me out of here. And so then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so broken. I just can't do this. And I'm like, plus the sensory ick of like patchouli and feet. And,
Oh yeah, the sensory ick. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's
just,
terrible.
ew.
It's terrible. And I think that a lot of times this, you made an important distinction. I think a lot of times we are anxious, but there's also potentially other health things that shouldn't be ignored, that should be looked into in tandem with dealing with the anxiety, because bringing that down can help you kind of have more of the wherewithal to advocate for yourself and get your answers. Because I don't know about, you're in America, I'm in Canada, but traversing the medical system here is probably similar to there. It's very difficult. Women are not listened to. Women and femme presenting folks were, and oftentimes some male presenting folks as well. We're told that we're just broken. They always jump to mental health, and very, oftentimes it is there. We are anxious, but also it's a multifactorial thing. It's not just one thing is going on, particularly if you're neurodivergent. Could be POTS, like, and then the histamine response. It could be a lot of things, but it doesn't mean it's not also anxiety. So dealing with that is not, it's not sort of a one-shot deal, and you're going to meditate and your life will be perfect. I think Dan Harris says it'll make you 10% happier. but I'll
I
take
love
it.
Dan.
I'll take
I
the
love Dan Harris.
10%. Yeah, it's realistic that this is not the only thing we need to do, but it is a very important thing that can help you in those moments of panic and overwhelm, so you can kind of deal with a stress before you deal with a stressor, get your
Yeah.
body a little bit more regulated so you can deal with the other things.
And I think that's one of the important things, and it's why I'm getting my master's in public health, specifically on making sure that we as autistic women in particular and female presenting, that we are getting health equity, that we are
Mm-hmm.
actually being heard. Because, when we look at how men and women are, in a binary sense are treated within the healthcare industry, when we go in and we have the same exact symptoms, we're saying the same exact thing, the man is usually getting treated immediately, and it takes 6 to 8 months for us to be listened to and anything to be done, and it's usually dismissed as some kind of mental health challenge, or it can't possibly be as bad as you're saying it is. And when you are also neurodivergent, that is even longer. It takes even longer to be heard and listened to. And it can be just the healthcare trauma that builds up. So, when we have all of these things, it's never just one experience. And I love that we can talk about this today. And I would really love to know, as we're talking about meditation and mindfulness, in your experience, what are some reasons that traditional practices tend to totally backfire or just go in the opposite direction against what you would think would be your response for our neurosparkly folks? And what makes mindfulness done differently different?
Yeah, I love the term neurosparkly, by the way. I'm going to have to use that. I love that. Neurospicy, neurosparkly. I love it. Oh, that's so great. Well, okay. So I think to answer your question, I think it's safe to say that anything conventional, including traditional meditation, is kind of built for the basic factory model brain, which is not us. Our brains are anything but basic, right? I don't know if
Oh
I'm
my
going to
gosh. Yeah. Always say the slow brains. We are not slow
yeah.
brains.
No, we're not. Or it's like there's ferrets parkouring through our head, right? That's our parkouring through our brain. I don't know if I'm butchering this stat or not, but I think it said that neurodivergent, autistic, and ADHD brains are 40% more active at rest due to less synaptic pruning. So that's a lot of extra activity, a lot of extra opportunity for rumination. Um, and there's some science to suggest that we're more self-critical, likely due to trauma and internalized criticism that we've heard from other people throughout the years. So there's a lot going on there. It's not, a simple thing of just sit down and breathe and meditate. We have a lot more, I think, barriers to doing that than other people. And a couple more things. Some of us have aphantasia, where we can't picture anything in our mind's eye, but a lot of meditation practices implement visualization, and they don't sort of factor that in or include any modifications for that. And then there's persistent desire for autonomy, PDA. So instructions can feel like a threat to the nervous system. So just the way I position it is always a suggestion. There's always options. You can sit out, you can participate. You get to decide what you want to do. No one's handing anyone a demand. So that's important too. And then, of course, attention differences, especially with us ADHDers. It can be hard to just sit there knowing I'm sitting here for an indefinite amount of time and my brain can just wander. And then we beat ourselves up for not being able to do it, having unrealistic expectations of what we should actually be realistically be able to achieve, because the conventional meditators don't share the subtext, which is they're doing this with 5% success at most. No one's sitting there with a completely clear and calm mind. I mean, even there's a bona fide monk, Yagi Mingir Rinpoche, who has panic attacks and he observes them as they're happening. So, but they don't share that. That's kind of an inside thought they don't share with us neurodivergents. Hey, this is not meant to be perfect. You don't have to be calm when you're doing this. If your mind wanders a million times and you just notice once that it has and you bring your focus back, you've meditated, bringing the bar way down. And I kind of liken it to I have an exercise example that I use that, you wouldn't. Can I swear on this podcast, by the way, or no?
Oh, absolutely. Have at it.
Okay,
Let it
sweet.
rip,
Okay.
Tater Chip.
Awesome. I'm going to let it rip. So I say that, you wouldn't do one squat and expect to have an ass like Beyonce, right? Unless you're naturally blessed, you know. Um, and if you have a knee injury, you'd put on a knee brace before you even did one squat. So what I mentioned there about, the expectations, that it's a practice. You need to do it over time and be kind and gentle with yourself and don't expect instant results. And have those accommodations, those metaphorical knee braces, which in this case with my community, it's movement, fidgeting, art, sensory play, and sound, kind of pacing, instructions, really intentional instructions, things like that, so that the practice is even accessible for you in the first place.
That's what I loved about the session that I joined over in the community. And it was so much fun. And it's just, not only is it accessible and different entry points. I really loved, because I'm also a certified meditation and breathwork instructor. And so I approach it from a trauma sensitive and rejection sensitivity and PDA informed place, because I'm like, nobody's telling me what to do, because, I'm one of those people. I'm like, it would be nice if you just opened an invitation. And, for those folks that don't have a vivid memory and they have aphantasia, how about we just talk about how you know or sense something? And sometimes that's just easier place to start. But I loved the community connection that also happens. It's not just showing up to meditate or playing or experimenting, but it's also connecting, which I really loved.
Well, thanks, Carole Jean. Thanks for the kind words. And I just wanted to reinforce again why the community is important, because a lot of us, well, many reasons, a lot of us have been told we're, bad, broken, the way we see, experience the world, feel things is wrong, or we shouldn't be doing it this way. So it's nice to connect with people who just get it, who think, I mean, not every neurodivergent person's the same. We're all different, but just to be on the same wavelength. Okay, someone gets me. I don't have to over explain. I don't have to dig for context. They just know, they just understand. And another thing, a therapist mentioned that was actually, I don't know why it was shocking to hear, but we're not meant to regulate our emotions by ourselves. We're meant to do it with other people. So if you're going off and doing your meditation videos, by yourself, that's fine. I mean, there's no problem with that. That's good. That's a good thing to practice. But when you add the community and the co-regulation, then you're really getting to a point where you can fully relax into yourself and feel that belonging and acceptance. And also your nervous system can just do a big sigh of relief, because we need that belonging. And when we don't feel like we belong, I mean, if you go back to caveman days, not belonging was a death sentence. You would literally be dead if you did not belong. So our bodies don't forget that we need that belonging and community to feel safe in our bodies. And then you layer on the meditation, and now we're adding in even more safety. So that's kind of how that's kind of how it all came together, the thinking behind it.
And it's just such a beautiful, magical place. It really is. But what I love, not just that element of it, that community element of it, but, as an instructor, I'm always learning from other teachers. And you taught me something that I really loved. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to definitely incorporate that. This was so genius. But you have like a pause for a stretch break. And as we're going through the meditation, you're like, okay, so we're here. And if you just need to move, stand up, stretch, whatever, go for it. And I'm like, oh, wow. That was just like, I didn't even realize that I needed to, because normally I'm not anymore. I can kind of sit, but I was like, oh, wow, I actually did need like a good stretch just then. And it was so perfect and just a beautiful experience. And I love how you invite everybody in, the way that you just give so many different ways to experiment and really play without all of the, I'm doing it right or I'm doing it wrong. It runs in the background for so many of us.
Yeah, exactly. And I know, because I think in a similar way. And for me, sitting for long periods of time is hard. And for a lot of neurodivergent people, particularly ADHD folks, it can be hard to just sit still. And I like that so I try to integrate the movement breaks every 2 to 3 minutes in a meditation. So you're never sitting for much longer than 5 minutes. And moving your body however you want. So for me, that's stimming. We can celebrate stimming as a way of expressing ourselves and meeting our sensory needs. I think that the sensory piece is really important to me, and I think when it comes to anxiety for neurodivergent folks, I think it's a very overlooked piece. I mean, when you're a kid, if you're speaking about an autistic or ADHD kid, it's like there's all the colors of the rainbow for every fidget. As soon as you hit 10 or 11, it's like, well, you don't need sensory stuff anymore. I guess you've aged out of that, but we still have a body, we still have sensory needs. So I really like to integrate that because I think it's something that's not talked about a lot for adults, for neurodivergent adults.
Oh, I 1000% agree with you. And it's one of the things that you and I really connected on that I appreciate so much about your approach, because in the unveiling method and in my research over the last 4 years, one of the most impactful areas is our sensory system. And when we can nourish all 7+ areas of our sensory system and help regulate and create sort of this safety within our nervous system and our sensory system, which are directly wired together, that is where restoration comes in. That is where that reclamation of ourself comes in. That is where we start to unmask. That's where we step into the absolute incredible version of us that has been under all of the stuff that the world has piled on top of us. And it's so important to give ourselves permission to know that, number one, 100% of research respondents in my study said an area of their sensory system was heightened during burnout. And so how we approach something in burnout and how our sensory system is responding, depending on the degree of burnout you're in, is going to be different than when you're in a state of optimum well-being. And just being able to recognize those things for me through the practice of mindfulness and meditation and really leaning into the sensory system was just huge. I don't know about you, and I would love to know, since you discovered your AuDHD and you really started to unpack what that means for you in your life and this beautiful stemming and mindfulness practice and community that you've created, what has been the most profound shift in your life, personally, professionally, whatever that is for you? What's come up for you?
Oh, so many things. I just wanted to comment on the sensory stuff quickly before sharing the shifts in my life. I'm a bit obsessed with this. So I kind of turned the sensory stuff into a bit of a special interest. So I put hundreds of hours into a course in my community on meeting your sensory needs. I have a very detailed sensory self-assessment questionnaire. And as you mentioned, our sensory system can change throughout our life, during burnout and with hormone changes as well. So looking at, what's your profile? Are you over responsive or under responsive for, vestibular, proprioception, all the 8 senses that we know of? There could be more. What is your profile? For example, for me, so vestibular, as you know, is the movement in your inner, or the fluid in your inner ears. When your head moves, it sort of sends signals to your brain about your, position, space, and time, or whatever. And some people are over responsive to that, like me. I don't like to spin. I don't like to be on roller coasters. But some people need that to regulate. They like to roller skate. They like to be on fast rides. They like to spin. So just knowing that about yourself can help you understand what are the things I need to do sensory wise that will help me regulate my body. And I try to integrate a lot of proprioceptive activities, which is the feedback to the muscles, joints, and tendons. And you can be over responsive to it, but it's very rare. So it's kind of the occupational therapist's go-to. Let's get some proprioceptive input. So I have some meditations where I integrate that in there, hugging a stuffy, squeezing our hands together into fists, putting our tongue to the roof of our mouth. So really, I think the sensory stuff is so, so important, but also understanding it's not just about buying a bunch of fidget spinners. What is it that you personally need for your sensory system? And how can you use that information to better meet your needs throughout the day?
Absolutely. And if you are an unveiler and you are listening right now, in your toolkit, you have your sensory profile blueprint that looks at all 7 different areas of your sensory system, including your sensory seeking and avoiding. So you can get that really quick hit list of what calms and regulates and helps you focus. What are the things that are really disruptive and energy
Mhm.
draining? And you can get that really quick list right off the top in that sensory profile blueprint. So make sure if you haven't dived in and used that and played with it yet, make sure you do if you're an unveiler here. But I love
Yeah.
that you do that in your community, and I didn't know that, so I am loving that you have a little class on that. But so share
Yeah.
with us, like, what has, now that you know what you know and you do what you do, what's been like
Mhm.
the biggest shift in your life for this? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I know how magical it can be. It's almost like I can't believe that was me back then, and now this is me today.
Yeah, I mean, it is like a magical process. I mean, sometimes, to be frank, it has been a painful process of,
Oh,
um,
for sure.
you know, not believing you're neurodivergent because for the first year or 2, I didn't believe it because I was like, "I need proof. I need." People would say, "Oh, you're not autistic. What are you talking about?" No, because they don't understand autism and neurodivergence in female presenting folks. So that was really hard, the imposter syndrome. But then I started meeting other neurodivergent people, and I'm like, "Of course I am. I'm very similar to all of you." So it just that connection with the community is what helped me really step into my neurodivergent identity. So I'm very grateful for that. I think one of the biggest changes is, for I used to force myself to do things I thought I should like or people expected me to like for example, going out for dinner with 10 friends at a noisy restaurant on a Saturday. I just thought, okay, maybe I'm just a bit anxious here. This should be fun. I'm supposed to be having fun. But I wasn't. And I would keep forcing myself to do those things, trying to fit into the mold of what everyone else thought I should be. Kind of like, I say I was like a square peg shoving myself into a round hole and the corners were breaking off. You kind of, at a certain point, begin to gaslight yourself into thinking your needs and feelings and preferences are not valid. And so they get forgotten and ignored. But my body was kind of screaming at me to listen, hey, we don't like this. This is social and sensory hell. And now that I have a different lens through which to look at my life and experiences, I know it wasn't just anxiety. Yes, there was anxiety, but my sensory needs, being over responsive to noise, having trouble sitting at a table, having trouble with the eye contact, auditory processing differences, not being able to keep track of multiple conversations, the social anxiety, just understanding the reasons for my experience of anxiety helped me to know what can I do to help myself in this moment. And I don't have to do this if I don't want to. I don't have to like the things that everyone else likes. I get to, if I want to go to a quiet restaurant with one other person, that's my prerogative. If I don't want to go, I don't go anymore. I don't force myself to do things that other people expect me to do anymore, especially if I'm low on spoons. And that includes, obligatory social gatherings. I just say no to them now if I don't have the energy, and I don't feel any guilt anymore that I'm doing something wrong for meeting my own needs. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing.
That is so powerful. Just that awareness, knowledge is freedom, because then we get to choose what works best for us. We get to, say not now or no,
Not
instead of
today.
always like
Yeah.
not today, instead of like always feeling like we have to force ourselves into that round hole and all of the edges are getting, shorn off, and we're feeling like we've just been skint to the bone, right? It's like all of the nerve
Yes.
endings are just raw, and
Like, this
it's
is
so
fun,
horrible.
so much fun at this dinner. Yeah. And then feeling bad that you didn't have fun and feeling more lonely at the end of it because it's like, well, these social things are supposed to provide connection and they're not. And it's this very confusing experience to feel lonely in the presence of others when you're not being your true self. You're not really connecting to others when you're in that state of mind.
You're really not. And I'm really curious too, just on the professional side of things. I mean, you mentioned going to all these big conferences in Las Vegas and all the socializing and all the stuff. And, just being able to look at how are you experiencing your professional life now with this beautiful mindfulness done differently? The awareness is about yourself. How has your meditation mindfulness practice really moved into your career today?
Yeah, well, a lot's changed since back then. I've been working full-time, self-employed for the last 12 years, and that change in itself has been huge. Having control over my own environment, getting to decide what my schedule is, all of this is, a big opportunity. And I just want to be mindful of the fact that not everyone has this opportunity. Some people have to go to jobs they don't like. They have to pay the bills, feed their family, and they're forced to do this. So my heart goes out to you if that's the case. There are things you can do to help with your sensory needs, loop earplugs, things like that. But I get it; it's really hard. So I was privileged enough to be able to make that career move. And my mindfulness practice has changed because I have two young kids, a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old. So I don't have a lot of time, and my life's really chaotic. So I like to, as much as I can, I try to do a meditation before bed. I don't do one every day. So it's okay. Some days I skip it if I have to, if I'm really tired. And I try to bring that mindfulness more into my day, what I call free range mindfulness. So when I'm on a walk, noticing the colors, let's notice the color brown, let's notice the color red, and then paying attention to the feeling of my feet, noticing thoughts, bringing it back to the meditation anchor. Having more mindful moments, drinking my coffee in the morning, noticing how the cup feels, what it smells like, what it tastes like, being in the garden. So all of these things can be considered mindfulness and meditation. If you have your meditation anchor, you focus your thoughts or your attention back to that anchor when your thoughts wander and drift. All of life can be a meditation. You don't have to just be sitting on a meditation cushion. So I like to approach it in that way because it's more portable. And I do the breath work quite often. If I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, I do the square breathing, the diaphragmatic breathing. That's a go-to for me as well. But I just wanted to let everyone know that you don't have to be doing this every single day in a very linear way. You could do it for a couple days, skip a couple days, do a meditation in your garden, go for a walk. It can be very easy. It doesn't have to be this rigid practice that you're this punishing practice of I have to do this, where it becomes something that you use to suppress yourself. It should be a joyful addition to your life. Um, Activities that you enjoy doing and coming back to, and not something you force yourself to do or kind of use as another reason to beat yourself up.
Oh, that is so true. I love that. I don't meditate every day either. I mean, I do breath work every day because I do it before I ever get out of a bed in the morning because that's just part of what helps me feel better. But I started to look at it in a different way, and this is a question I asked myself, so I'm going to share it. Maybe this is something that might just be the thing that you needed to hear today. When I think about any type of practice that I'm doing, meditation, breath work, going for a walk, any of it, I kind of just check in for a minute with my body and I see like what's my brain speed? Is it fast, neutral, or slow? What kind of thoughts or words are kind of running through right now? Is there a distinct feeling or emotion that I'm having? And I know if I'm doing something that's aligned in the moment when I ask myself, do I feel expansive in this? Do I feel like I am sort of in the flow of things, or do I feel restricted and somehow more concrete, right? And if I feel concrete, I feel like I'm forcing something that I know that it's not the time, maybe it's not the thing. But if I have that sort of expansive feeling and it's kind of a flow, I think like water, that's when I
Yeah.
know I'm doing the thing that's nourishing me.
Yes, I love your metaphor of comparing it to water, because something I say is I'll see if I can explain this properly, but don't turn your river into concrete, because I think we have this idea that thoughts and feelings are this fixed thing like a concrete statue, but in reality they're more of this fluid flowing thing that if we pay attention to them and we're mindful of these thoughts and feelings, they kind of just flow into the next one and we can move on versus being so fixed on one state of mind or emotion. And I mean, folks with, I know you're alexithymic too, Carole Jean, so am I find that if I do my regular meditation practice, I'm not saying this is true for everyone, but it does improve for me. I start to notice bodily sensations and emotions much more readily, and more positive emotions and feelings of presence. For example, I mean, this is a bit of a weird example, but whatever. It's okay to be weird here. Just
I
looking
mean,
at
I don't know any other way to be, so bring it.
know your audience. But just looking at a bottle of olive oil and thinking, wow, the bubbles are so beautiful. I just find myself getting caught up in these ordinary, beautiful moments of complete presence versus, a break from that rumination. And with alexithymia, if we can, I have a bunch of meditations on this. If we can focus more into the sensations in the body, we can, and attach it to something we know brings us joy. For example, special interests, which I call joy portals. I have a meditation on this. We're reflecting on our special interest, noticing what's happening in the body. We kind of start to create a blueprint for what that emotion might be. Is this joy? I'm having tingles in the right side of my head. Is that what joy feels like in my body? Rather than just asking someone, what are you feeling? What's the emotion? Because many people can't say what that is. So we're sort of doing a little bit of detective work to create a bridge, if you will, to understanding and feeling emotions in our body, which it is possible. We can improve that with meditation.
And that right there, folks, is mindfulness done differently.
Sure is.
That right there. And I love it. That is just, oh, it makes my heart so happy. So, Tanya, if you could go back and speak to your younger self, that version of you who felt like she was failing at mindfulness, well being, or just being human, what would you tell her right now?
Oh, so many things. I wish I could go back, make a time machine. Well, first of all, I would tell her she's not broken, bad, wrong, or too much, or not enough. I would tell her she's beautiful and worthy of love for just existing, not performing. I would ask her to stop trying to shove her square pegged self into round holes and, having those corners break off. Um, and I would tell her that trying to change everything about herself to fit in means she's going to lose herself. And everyone will fall in love with a mask, but that will inevitably just lead to loneliness. And that's not what she deserves. She deserves to be accepted, for who she is, to find her weirdos and stop trying to make other people happy at the expense of herself, making herself small. And I tell her, get the nose ring, dye your hair purple, get the bird tattoo. People are going to stare anyway. So it's okay to do the things you want to do, and you don't have to always run it through the lens of what will people think and how will they judge me, because they're going to judge anyway. So might as well give them something to look at, right?
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I mean, that kind of got me tearing up just a little bit, if I'm being honest.
Oh.
And I'm so glad that I'm so glad I can be one of your weirdo friends, because you're one of mine.
Me too. You're such a sparkly, so neuro-sparkly, Carole Jean. You're the best.
Oh, thanks, Tanya. I feel the same way about you. And if you just heard what Tanya said and it really spoke to you, and that's maybe something that you wanted to tell your younger self, take that moment. Take that moment right now and just put your hand on your heart. And you don't have to think anything. You can just like feel what you're feeling and just send that to that younger version of you. But then also claim that same love, that same grace, that same kindness for yourself right now. The you that's here today, that present, beautiful, wonderfully wired, neurosparkly, perfect thing that you are right now. Because you don't need to be anything different.
Yes, exactly. And we can reparent ourselves. We can reparent our inner child. If we haven't had a good childhood, I mean, it's obviously seek out therapy if you need to, but we have that opportunity now as adults to go back metaphorically and give our child self what they didn't get. We're the responsible adults now. We get to decide what love we extend. And that may seem a bit woo-woo, but there's a lot of science around inner child work. It's
I
a
am so
bona
not
fide
a
therapy
responsible
modality.
adult.
Responsible enough.
I mean, thank gosh for people in my life.
Oh,
I
that's
try to
funny.
I try to do the adulting thing, but sometimes I just do it my own way and it may not look like everybody else's version. And if that's you too, you're doing all right. That's all I gotta
Exactly.
say on
We're
that
doing
one.
good enough.
Oh my goodness. Tanya, thank you so much for showing us that peace doesn't have to be silent, that stillness doesn't have to mean not moving or stimming,
Mhm.
and that regulation can be reimagined for every kind of brain and body. You've reminded us that we don't need to fit into someone else's mold to feel grounded. We just need to come home to the way we were designed to calm. To all of our unveilers listening, if you've ever thought, why can't I just relax like everyone else? I must be doing something wrong. Or maybe meditation just isn't for me. Please hear this. You are not too much. You just haven't been offered the right kind of support for your beautifully wired brain and body. Please check out Tanya's amazing experience with Mindfulness Done Differently. We have a link down in the show notes so you can try it for yourself and experience how STEM meditation can be playful, fidgety, and fun. You can use code Beyond Burnout with the link below and get your first 30 days for free. Thank you for that gift, Tanya. This
Oh,
is
you're so
exactly
welcome.
right. It's so sweet. I love it because Self Care September is all about exploration. It's about finding what works for you. And this is exactly what Beyond Chronic Burnout and Whittington Wellbeing are here to give you a way to play, explore, and find what works for you, not someone else. Take the Spicy Pepper Burnout quiz today to discover your burnout level. From a poblano level 1, where you might just be simmering, up to that ghost pepper level 5, where you could possibly be so hot you're not, and receive our new free audio mini series customized to your exact burnout level. This isn't generic advice. We don't do that around here. It's built for your brain, your nervous system, and your healing journey. Take the quiz now at whittingtonwellbeing.com or find the link in today's show notes. Until next time, give yourself permission to find calm in your own way. You deserve peace, and it doesn't have to look like anyone else's. See you next week.
Thanks for being here. It's been quite a ride. Energy mastery, let's turn the tide. Top shelf guests, dropping wisdom bombs. Join us next week, where the energy's strong. Beyond chronic